All right, guys, welcome back to the Cultural Podcast. Today I'll be doing my preview and prediction for number 2 Ohio State traveling to Eugene to take on number 3 Oregon in a monumental clash here in the Big Ten. Ohio State 3.5-point favorites, 51.5 is the total. NBC will be doing this game at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, things started with the traveling team offense. Ohio State 46 points per game thus far. It's been a very good approach here since entering conference play, winning games by 38 and 35-7, respectively, over Michigan State and Iowa. Will Howard, a guy that arrived from Kansas State, a bigger cat, 6'4", 235. He's having a good year. 12 touchdowns, 3 picks. He's got a rushing touchdown now in 4 straight games. He has some wheels on him. This is something I noticed on film at KSU. Is he's got some pretty good speed. He's a live runner at the goal line. He's starting to prove that with the number I just read off. His, season high is 292 yards passing, so he's yet to find a 300-yard game this year. This has been a methodical passing attack, though. 71% completion rating, 10 yards per attempt. I mean, they're not out here just trying to launch the deep ball. This is a team last year that really struggled with consistency, didn't really run the ball all that well because of some offensive line struggles. And this year, they're certainly an improved unit. It's not all just about numbers. You don't have to come out here and put up, 600 per contest. That's not the makings of a good offense, one that can be consistent, put themselves in situations to succeed, and so far they're doing that. Over 50% conversion rate on third down. That's something that they were good with against Iowa at 63%. And really the only game that brought that down was a big blowout over Western Michigan. So this is a team that's been very efficient, been able to throw the football. Well, Howard, again, been very good. And you look at some of the receivers. True freshman Jeremiah Smith, this guy's ridiculous. Chip Kelly said that he could be starting in the NFL right now, which is crazy. He's a teenager. 23 grabs, 453, and 6 touchdowns. It seems like each week, though, he's putting on a highlight reel of a catch. 2 weeks in a row, he's had an impressive one-handed snag for a touchdown. This is a very consistent receiver nonetheless, though. I mean, he's got a touchdown in every single game. He's eclipsed 70 yards in every single game. This is a very impressive player. 6'3", 215 from Miami. Mika Egbuka right behind him. The veteran, on the other hand, just shy, 433 yards, 5 touchdowns on 7 more receptions at 30. A sophomore, Carnell Tate. And then another second-year guy, Brandon Ennis, are right behind them. Ennis, he was able to get on the field a good bit against Iowa. He had 3 receptions in that one. And then Tate, this is a guy who is a very solid number 3 receiver at this moment in time. Didn't play against Iowa. They held him out. They said he would have been good to go if they needed him. He's had over 45 yards in every game this year. So he's been a very solid, third option for the Buckeyes. I mean, this is a highly talented receiving group. These guys are all former 5-star recruits, every name I just read off. Other than that, production's been pretty limited amongst this bunch, but I mean, they don't really need 7 different guys catching passes. The ones they have are phenomenal. These guys all have a variety of different skill sets. So this passing has been very good, very methodical. Looking at the rushing attack, headlined by this incredible 1-2 punch of Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson. Early on in the year, it seemed like this offensive line, specifically in the opener, kind of got out-muscled. I wasn't very impressed with how they looked. But since then, they've got Donovan Jackson back in the lineup at left guard. He's been absolutely splendid. Josh Simmons has improved tremendously at left tackle. They're coming off a game against Iowa where they put up 200-plus rushing. This is a matchup I was interested in seeing how they would do. Obviously, they were going to win the game. I picked them to cover the entire time. But how would they do running the football against the physical, front 7? They passed the test. They look very good in that matchup. So this offensive line is starting to surge at the right moment. The rest of the group, Seth McLaughlin at center has been very splendid so far. Right guard, Tegra Tejbola, kind of a weaker link. Josh Fryer at right tackle as well. So the right side's a little bit weaker than you would like. But again, they're starting to surge at the right time. This is an offense with plenty of talent across the board. There's so many different weapons they can hit you with. Judkins has 468 and 5 scores. Henderson has 337 and 4 TDs as well. James Peoples has gotten involved whenever they've needed him, and I'm sure he'll see the field a couple of times in this contest. And those 2 guys are, the top 2 backs are pretty good pass catchers as well. A lot of explosiveness here, physicality as well. I mean, this is a very tough breed of offense to play when you have talent like this across the board for Ohio State. So, they're not out here putting up 70 a game. Who cares? They're putting up a methodical effort because last year's offense was very disappointing. They didn't have many games where they blew people out. And so far, they just played an Iowa team where they were very good, protected the football, and a methodical team. Well, for the most part, they did. They did have a bad. Howard had a pick, and then they had a fumble in plus territory. So the ones they had didn't really hurt them all that bad. Obviously, want to avoid that in a matchup with Oregon, though. So But I do want to say that they didn't perfectly protect the ball, but they should be able to clean that up in this ball game, and they should have a great unit that's going to be incredibly confident with a great blend of leadership, veterans and newcomers. So Buckeyes, phenomenal unit here. Now you move to an Oregon offense that has quite frankly underperformed in their own right. Early on in the season, Idaho, Boise State, they needed 2 special team scores to put that one away. Did nothing against the FCS opponent, really. They had almost 500 yards, but they couldn't score the ball since entering conference play. It's been a little bit shaky. They have a lot of balance against Michigan State. They were better against UCLA, had a phenomenal game against Oregon State. So the offense has certainly gotten better. This is a unit that I would say I do expect to be putting up, 50 points per game. I just talked about the Buckeyes, who cares? But I think in terms of Oregon, the lack of explosiveness has just kind of been underwhelming. Dylan Gabriel is having a great year. 78% completion rating, almost 1,500 yards. Does have 3 interceptions over the last 2 games, though. Had a bad one in the end zone against Michigan State. Again, they only won by 21 points at home. Great group of wide receivers. Tez Johnson out of the slot, 43 receptions for nearly 400 yards, 5 touchdowns for him. I think the biggest surprise here is Evan Stewart's just not really been involved, not a part of the unit. 4th leading pass catcher right now. Did have a touchdown against MSU, only 20 yards there, though. Did have 100-plus yards against Boise State. That's the only game this year of over 30 yards, though, for him. This is a highly talented wide receiver, and I think at some point he's going to break through, and I think you should see a lot of reps in a game like this. Trayshawn Holden, though, as the number 2 pass catcher, he's earned that role. He did it last year. So far for this offense, he's been good. 274 and 3 scores. At tight end, Terrence Ferguson is a really good player. This is a team that has plenty of weapons. They're incredibly deep at this position. Need to see more out of them, though. Tez Johnson can't just be hogging all the targets, even though he's a very good player in the open field, especially at the sticks. Very consistent player for them. Certainly want to see these receivers continue to step up, though, especially Stewart. And, I think the run game. Coming in this year, I thought Jordan James was a phenomenal player. I thought he was going to be a Doak Walker candidate, and he's coming off the best game of the year for him against MSU. $166 rushing and a score on the season. He's got 552 and 5 touchdowns. Noah Whittington right behind him has been, a respectable number 2 runner. And Gabriel also has 3 touchdowns. So, this rushing attack only putting up about 164 yards per game. That was a problem for them in the first couple of weeks. They just weren't able to run the ball against 2, weaker opponents, I would say, compared to what they're going to see in the Big Ten. They didn't run the ball that well against UCLA. It was a consistent, balanced attack, but they're not out here just putting up an abundance of numbers. It's putting a lot of emphasis on this passing attack, really having to carry this offense. And the O-line has been a big reason for that. I think Josh Connerly and Johnny Cornelius are a phenomenal tackle duo, both having great years. On the interior, though, it's a little bit underwhelming. Nishad Strother at left guard. You have a center, Wapani Laluhu. He's having a good year in terms of pass protection, in terms of run blocking, though he certainly has been getting beat up. And Marcus Harper, a veteran, who's just been very disappointing at right guard. I don't really know why he's been this bad. Certainly has been a very weak season for him. I thought he would have been a big leader and a big strength for them, but so far he's not passed that test. This is an offensive line that, they're just not clicking. They're not in full gear, and you certainly expect them to do that with time. But this is not the right week to try and figure that correct mesh, because this is a very physical, talented Ohio State front that we'll get to in a second. But this is an Oregon offense that they're vastly disappointing so far. Only 35 points per game, not really running the score up like you would imagine. Outside of the Oregon State game, other than that, they've been really struggling to score points. Quarterback's starting to turn the ball over and be a little bit less accurate than he was early on. And the run game has been complimentary at best. So the Oregon offense has been a bitter disappointment. There's so much talent, they can just spark it at any given week. And if it happens here this week against Ohio State, they're instantly going to be one of the top teams in the country for the rest of the year. So even though I'm being critical of them right now, there's certainly an opportunity on the table for them to impress. So I'm not going to full-fledged say this is a bad unit by any means. It's a phenomenal offense, and they can certainly hurt you in a variety of different ways once they start clicking. Now, looking at that Ohio State defense, this is a team that's been elite against the run this year. Coming off a game against a very good Iowa O-line rushing attack. Held them to 116 and 1 score. Caleb Johnson was able to rip off a couple of nice runs, but nothing that's really going to make the game any different than it was. That being, a 28-point victory. It starts with a D-line that is just phenomenal. They have 2 great edge rushers in JT Tumalau, Jack Sawyer. These guys are great against the run as well. No slouch when it comes to those 2 players. On the interior, they're just as good. Ty Hamilton, Tyleek Williams. I love what these guys bring to the table. Caden McDonald. Talking about some of the different guys they have now in terms of depth. Caden McDonald, Caden Curry as well. This is a team that's got great starting players, depth maybe a little bit more untested, something that, maybe as we get later into the year, you'll start to find out about. I know Kanata Jackson's been playing a lot. But in terms of starter, you guys are all phenomenal. Williams is a great run defender. You're hoping he'll be on the field for this one. Hamilton as well. These guys are two veterans with a lot of size. And then the edge rushers are phenomenal for them. So, this will be a fun duo with these edge rushers against those two tackles. It's really going to be best on best. So I'm very happy with what Ohio State is bringing to the table in that regard. Middle of the defense, you wondered what they would do at linebacker this year. Sonny Styles will be moving back down to his primary position. He's been very good, 30 tackles, 3 TFL, team high there. A bigger guy, 235 pounds. Had no business really playing safety, but they kind of needed him to play it last year. Then he started getting burned a little bit. But this is a versatile player. He can play a little bit slot when you need him to, play some coverage. Sonny Styles is a very good player. Cody Simon, Arvell Reese, Simon obviously being a veteran, Reese a younger guy that's played very good. And then CJ Hicks is starting to get on the field a little bit. So this linebacking group, they've been phenomenal against the run so far. I don't know why this would be any different. The responsibilities for them aren't all that difficult with the D-line they have in front of them, of course. But Styles has been really heating up. This is a guy that's got all of his TFLs coming over the last 2 games with them entering Big Ten play. So very impressive stuff from the Buckeyes. The linebacking group was probably the biggest concern for this defense, and so far they've passed all the tests. Then you look at a secondary that I'm a massive fan of. I thought coming into the year that the Jim Thorpe Award winner would come from this unit. You have Devison Egbason, Denzel Burke. Davison's a really good run defender, like his tackling abilities out on the edge. Had an interception last week. Burke, he's been around numerous years now at this point. He's probably their best cover corner. He's got 2 picks as well. Only 4 as a team. But this is a group that is very good. They've not had too many opportunities to succeed with the opponents they've been playing in terms of, racking up interceptions or just blatantly annihilating opponents, because they've been playing weaker teams, and, that's, people are going to knock on that. There's that slouch right there. So now they're going to be playing a good physical or a good, passing attack that can hurt you downfield with the physical weapons that they have, the athletes that are in that group. This is a good group that they can improve a lot of respect against. Didn't have too many issues against Iowa. It wasn't really expected, even though they were playing some nice tight ends from the Hawkeyes. It wasn't going to be much of a challenge for them. Of course, you have Caleb Downs, who can get in the box and make a lot of great plays at safety. Quite start to the year for him, but he can cover tight ends, as can Lathan Ransom. So, a lot of versatility here. Really good run-stopping abilities. Ransom, the veteran, Downs, the younger cat. These guys are both very good, though. This is an incredibly deep unit. Of course, in the slot, Jordan Hancock is a tremendous player who's very good in coverage for them, like his abilities. And Jermaine Matthews is also a guy that might get on the field at times. So, this is the most complete secondary in college football, I'd say, by far. Be an opportunity here for them to prove it, too. If they go out and, give up some big plays to Oregon, it certainly might lower the standard just a little bit. But I think overall, this is a team that's going to have a lot of success against the pass. And Oregon, the pass rushers they have, they're going to be able to create in the secondary. They're going to be able to jump routes. They're going to be able to make plays in the box. It's going to be a tough unit overall for Oregon to crack. Can't wait to see this matchup. Look at the Oregon defense now. This is a team that you've looked to in the trenches. Last year they weren't all that polished in terms of pass rushing. Run defense was good until they played Washington, of course. And so far, Jordan Birch, he's having a much better year than last season. 5 sacks, 7 TFL. This guy's just been teeing off the last couple of weeks. Been a very impressive player for them coming off the edge. Other than that, who can you look to be reliable? Derek Harmon on the interior is having a good season with his 4.5 TFL. A 310-pound demon against the run. I really like what he brings to the table. He's been a big-time addition from Michigan State. Mateo Uyungale off the edge is another guy that is a younger guy who's going to continue to get better. In games like this, he can certainly make his presence felt, especially against a weaker right side. Jamari Caldwell in the interior, another one of those transfers they picked up that's got plenty of size. This is a D-line that's much improved. Starting to get more production last year. Again, they didn't have much of a pass rush. They really teed off on weaker opponents against the tougher offenses. They weren't able to manufacture much. And this is a legit offense. The best one they played so far this year was Boise State. Only recorded 1 sack in that one. Last 2 weeks, though, against in-conference opponents, they've recorded 9 of them. So, not the greatest opponents, of course, but they're able to step up so far this year. Outside of Birch, though, you got to be able to point to someone who can make plays. I think the run stoppers on the interior, they can certainly be people you point to. But other than that, who's going to step up is the biggest question for Oregon. And we'll certainly find that out. At linebacker, Bryce Bocher, he's a guy who probably is going to be that candidate. He's got 3 pass breakups, an interception. He's been tremendous in coverage on top of being the leading tackler at 32 stops. A guy that's kind of came out of nowhere, played a good bit last season. Didn't think he'd be, the emphatic leader he's been so far for this unit. I certainly still wonder, can this linebacking group contain an offense like this? Because it's kind of the weak point for, I think, Dan Lanning's unit. It was last year. They've really had to convert a couple of different guys from, defensive back like Jeffrey Bassa down to the middle of this defense. Devon Jackson's gotten on the field a good bit. Average player at best, I guess you could say. Justin Jacobs isn't seeing the field all that much. Connor Scholl, not really much of a factor for this team either. Hasn't been playing. So this is a linebacker group I'm certainly concerned about. I cited Bocher, who I think will continue to be impressive in coverage. I would hope, it's going to be tough against these weapons, especially these backs. But other than him, I just don't have that much confidence in this linebacking group. Tatum, T.O.T., one of their younger outside backers, you're hoping to see him maybe step up. Kind of confused on who I think will be the go-to guys, but overall this is a good run defense. They shouldn't get burned too bad in this one, even though when they played Ashton Gianti, they gave up 221 and 3 scores. So I expect them to be better. Should be in that 150-yard category. Any more than that, though, they're probably going to lose this game. So I think they'll be better. Not a solidified guarantee at this point, though. Moving to an Oregon secondary that's had a very good season so far. 53% completion rating allowed. Have yet to give up a 200-yard performance, 4 touchdowns on top of only 2 TDs. And this is a unit they also, heavily attended to in the portal. You look at Jabbar Muhammad, one of the top corners in America last year. He's having a phenomenal year so far. Nico Reed, on the other hand, a guy that I think they picked up a couple years ago, so he's been in the program for a little bit now. Having an all right year at the other cornerback position. Dante Manning, a veteran. Those 3 guys will be the main players that get on the field at corner. I love Jabbar Muhammad's abilities. How will he do against Jeremiah Smith? I'm not sure. I certainly think that the veteran will have some crafty moves to be able to prevent the younger guy from getting the best of him. That'll be a fun matchup. Brandon Johnson, a veteran they picked up from Duke in the slot. Having a great year. I love his run defense abilities. He's pretty good in coverage as well. Kobe Savage getting on the field a good bit. This is a player, him and Tysheem Johnson have been splitting a lot of duties in this secondary. Johnson was one of the best players for them a year ago, and he's having another great season in coverage and in terms of run defense. So this is an Oregon secondary that's incredibly loaded with talent. This will be a big opportunity, though, to prove that these are the right guys they have in the fold, and I certainly think that they are. But against Ohio State, this is just such a complex scheme to defend. They create a lot of space. And of course, these pass catchers are so good at what they do that it's certainly hard to limit what they can do. But they'll have opportunities to make plays, come down with pass breakups and interceptions. So I think there's 2 very good secondaries going at it against each other. The Ducks, though, when it comes to them, again, you got to worry about what can they do against the run to be even able to have a chance against the pass, because I think play action could certainly burn them, especially across the middle of the field. Confident in the secondary's abilities, though, even in a matchup like this. Looking at the tail of the tape, that team comparisons, and I don't know if this is just disrespectful or what, but I certainly think that Ohio State has the edge at every single position, and that doesn't mean Oregon's lacking too bad. I gave them praise for the tackles that they have. Great, duo in that regard. The D-line has a lot of very good players. The secondary also has some talented players, and then the wide receiver room is one of the deepest ones in America as well, but I just can't see myself giving them an edge over the Buckeyes in any of these groups in terms of roster depth. Jordan James is a tremendous runner. You're not getting the nod over those 1-2 punch guys for the Buckeyes, though. I just don't think Oregon has an advantage here at all, and that doesn't mean they're going to lose this game by a whole lot of points or even lose the game at all, but I definitely think the Buckeyes are head and shoulders the best roster in America at this moment in time. You look at the final thoughts and the prediction. I have the Buckeyes winning this one. A relatively close game, though. Going to Eugene, that can be expected. I think flex your muscle for the D-line. And I think the wide receivers just continue to make great plays like you've been doing. Find consistent heat off the edge for Oregon. Got to disrupt Howard. You got to make it hard for him to find these guys downfield. And you want to play fast and run the ball well on offense, because you got to be able to slow down this D-line at some point. I think on the interior, kind of maybe at a bit of a disadvantage against these guys. Your tackles, I'm confident they can hold up in pass pro. They're going to overwhelm them enough to be able to generate a good rushing attack, though? Probably not. So it's going to take a collective bunch, but if they can do that, and they can move fast and force these guys to start rotating more than they would like, I think that'll be big for them, because that's one thing Ohio State does very well is they're not, forced to rotate a whole lot because they're not on the field all that much because they get so many stops, and it's hard for these opponents to create methodical drives against them. 31% on third down this year, so it just seems like a game that Ohio State's really going to prove a point in this one, just because I think the roster really is better than Oregon's as a team that is kind of underperformed up until this moment in time. And, we've seen that at times before. I picked Oregon to demolish Washington in the Pac-12 title game because Washington had been underperforming going into the game, and they ended up almost blowing out the Ducks. So, and it ended up being a close game at the end. But nonetheless, I think Ohio State, this is a game they're going to win 31-24. I do see a world where they go out and make a couple of mistakes. The crowd gets to them a little bit, and they're not playing their best ball. Maybe they start to hang their hats a little bit. So I think Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, you got to have these guys coached up, and I think they're going to be in the right mental space to come on the road and pick up a big victory. 7-point victory for me. I think they can get it done by even more than that, though. It's going to be it for today's episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.